The words HOA land grab stretched 30 feet across the fresh wooden fence in bold black letters. So large they were impossible to ignore from the street. Karen's face turned crimson as neighbors gathered, phones raised, recording every second of the unfolding spectacle. She hadn't seen this coming. Her hands trembled as her eyes scanned the message. And I saw it. The exact instant she realized her grip on this neighborhood was slipping fast. Let me take you back. My name is David. I've lived on Meadowbrook Lane for 15 years, in a modest 3-bedroom home. But the true gem of my property is the 100 feet of private lakefront that wraps behind it. It's peaceful, serene, and the entire reason for the mess that followed Karen Peaton's arrival. 6 months ago, Karen moved into our lakeside neighborhood from the city and wasted no time getting involved. She ran for HOA president, promising bold beautification and enhanced property values. What she didn't say was that her vision involved repurposing my private lakefront for community use. I missed the HOA meeting, where she proposed creating a shared lakeside amenity space. According to the minutes, it passed with little debate. What no one realized, or cared to mention, was that the entire plan hinged on using land I legally owned. I found out the following Saturday, when my neighbor Jim knocked on my door, concern written all over his face. "Hey, just thought you should know. The HOA reclassified your lakefront as community space," he said. I laughed. "They can't do that. I own that land." He just shrugged. "Might want to talk to Karen." Finding her didn't take long. She was in my backyard, clipboard in hand, directing 2 confused contractors while pacing around with a measuring tape. I confronted her on the spot. She gave me this overly sweet smile that barely masked her smugness. "The board voted, David," she said. "The lakefront is now a communal feature. It's for the good of the neighborhood." I pulled out my phone and showed her the deed, clear as day. My property boundary ran all the way to the water line. She glanced at it, barely, then waved it off. "The HOA has authority to make community improvements," she said with a condescending tone. "You should be proud to contribute." What followed was a masterclass in stonewalling. I filed official complaints with the HOA, only to realize Karen had packed the board with her allies. I contacted county offices, only to be redirected endlessly. Meanwhile, construction crews kept showing up. First, they installed benches. Then came the wooden signage. "Welcome to Meadowbrook Community Lakefront." And then, the gravel footpath began. The final straw came one morning when I stepped out and found workers installing a full-size pavilion, just 20 feet from my back door. I marched over to Karen, who was predictably present, clipboard in hand. "This is criminal trespassing," I said. "You're stealing my land." She scoffed. "You're overreacting." Then she delivered the line that sealed her fate. "There's nothing you can do now, David. It's already done." That night, I made 2 phone calls. One to a professional surveyor and one to my brother-in-law, who just happens to be a seasoned real estate attorney. By Monday, bright orange flags marked the true perimeter of my property. The survey confirmed everything. Not only was the lakefront entirely mine, but Karen's precious community improvements actually encroached several feet beyond the HOA's supposed boundaries. With the official report in hand, I went on the offensive. First, I hired a fencing company. I requested the tallest privacy fence legally allowed, 8 feet of solid cedar. Installation began that Saturday at 7 a.m., while Karen was home. By noon, her so-called community space had been completely walled off. The benches now stared at a blank fence, the pavilion sealed in. The path terminated at a wall of fresh lumber. Then I grabbed a paint roller. Using exterior-grade black paint and commercial letter stencils, I laid out my message with precision. Each letter stood 3 feet tall. HOA land grab took me 3 hours to complete. Every edge was sharp, not a single drip. This wasn't vandalism. This was protest. Legal, visible, and impossible to ignore. I'd barely put my brush down when Karen's SUV screeched into my driveway. She stormed out, livid, yelling at me to tear the fence down. I remained calm. It's on my land, built to code, permitted. She threatened to fine me. I handed her a copy of the survey. Watching her read it was like watching a balloon deflate. Her bravado vanished. Her eyes widened when she saw just how far her improvements extended beyond community lines. And worse, for her, they had been built using HOA funds, thousands in dues, on private land. She tried a new angle. The fence violates neighborhood aesthetics. I pointed out that HOA guidelines only governed street-facing structures. The lakeside, exempt. She called the lettering divisive. I smiled. First Amendment, Karen. Look it up. By Sunday, photos of my fence were viral. HOA land grab became a local legend. Neighbors came by to offer stories of Karen's past abuses. The local news did a segment. And then, Karen stammered, then froze. That clip alone got 500,000 views in 2 days. A special HOA meeting was called that Thursday. The room was packed. Karen tried to regain control, but the community had turned. Dozens of homeowners stood up. They demanded answers. When she tried to shut it down under executive privilege, my brother-in-law stood and introduced himself as my attorney and announced a lawsuit was already underway for trespassing, land conversion, and property rights violations. The board panicked. One member resigned on the spot. Another apologized publicly. A vote of no confidence was called and passed by a landslide, 47-3. Karen's only supporters were the 2 board members she'd appointed. As the vote was finalized, she stood at the podium, stunned, face flickering between rage and disbelief. But the fallout didn't end there. The HOA's insurance carrier launched an investigation into fund misuse. The county issued citations for unpermitted construction. The contractor sued for non-payment because Karen had authorized the work without legal approval. 2 weeks later, the HOA's lawyer reached out with a settlement offer. Full removal of all structures at HOA expense. Reimbursement of all legal and survey fees. A formal written apology published in the community newsletter. And a binding legal injunction preventing the HOA from ever touching my land again. I accepted, but I left the fence up. It had become more than a message. It was a monument. Neighbors brought their guests to see the HOA land grab wall. It became a local landmark, a symbol of standing up to petty tyranny. Karen's final downfall came when her employer, a property management firm, caught wind of the story. They fired her for misconduct and reputational harm. The last time I saw her was in the grocery store parking lot, loading boxes into a U-Haul. She avoided eye contact. Word was she was moving out of state. The new board sent me a letter confirming the fence could stay. They even offered to repaint it for free if I wanted to remove the lettering. I declined. Those 4 words had cost Karen her title, her job, and her home. But they had given the rest of us something priceless: accountability. The total damages were tallied at $47,000, fully reimbursed by the HOA. Karen was personally fined $8,000 for code violations. When the judge read the fine, she sank into her chair, sobbing. As I stood on my back deck that evening, watching the sun sink behind the lake, I realized something. That fence didn't divide the neighborhood. It saved it. It reminded us that unchecked power, even in the hands of an HOA,